Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
49 faces looked to him in triumph. Over the last 12 months, they had each taken turns and promoted his business for a week at a time, driving over $987,342 in revenue. What if you had a network of 50 centers of influence who promoted your business every week for a year? Grab your copy of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, The Ultimate Guide to Growing Your Business with a Podcast, at 33% off the Amazon price by going to ultimatepodcastbook.com. Again, that website for 33% off the Amazon price is ultimatepodcastbook.com.
Welcome to the podcast. This is your host, Seth Greene. Today, I've got the good fortune to be with Ed Rush, a decorated Marine Corps FA-18 pilot. He was also the #1 instructor in the Marine Corps for one-on-one dogfighting. He was instrumental in the training development for the new F-35 Lightning II Joint Stroke Fighter. He's flown close to 2,000 tactical office hours. He is a professional speaker, author, and thought leader and advisor. And he's helped people from startups to multi-million-dollar organizations, CEOs, founders, Hollywood stars, even one of the contestants on season 1 of Donald Trump's show, The Apprentice. Ed, thank you so much for joining us.
What's up, Seth? Awesome to be here, man. Let's put the throttles in the left-hand corner and get this fighter jet in the air, man. Let's do it.
Awesome. So you flew over 50 combat missions, completed 2 Iraq tours, #1 instructor on aerial dogfighting. How did those shape your experience in terms of when it comes to like corporate and personal leadership?
Yeah, interesting question. My 50 combat hours in Iraq, by the way, were largely uneventful. Everyone asked what happened over there. We were flying airplanes with really big bombs and really small targets. I love the service that we did over there. Loved obviously what we were doing, but it's interesting. It all started with me by failing kindergarten. I did kindergarten twice. I don't like mentioning that fact. My daughter recently graduated from kindergarten, by the way, with honors. I was so proud of her. But at the same time, I was like, how dumb do you have to be to fail this grade, man? It's like blocks and colors and stories. It's not hard subject matter. And that brought me into, graduating from kindergarten, eventually got out of college, but it actually brought me into one of the most powerful success principles that I teach. And it's the most simple one, by the way. It's literally the easiest one. You find successful people and you do what they do, and you don't do what they don't do. And then you find unsuccessful people and you don't do what they do and you do what they don't do. It's very simple. And it's interesting. Our whole society is based on the idea that the majority is always right. I learned early in business, the majority is actually always wrong. The majority's broke. The majority's out of shape. The majority has bad relationships. If you want to do something extraordinary, be different than ordinary. And yeah, my time in the cockpit really taught me a lot about being an entrepreneur, because entrepreneurship is about speed. You make about 9 mistakes for every 1 success that you have. Your success rate is less than the average major league, catcher. You're about 100. You're about 10%. But as long as you can keep resilient and you can keep adjusting, the missiles won't hit you, and you'll eventually hit the target. And that's really the biggest thing that I learned.
Wow. You also helped develop the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter training program. How did that work influence your thinking about like high stakes preparation and performance?
Yeah, so it's interesting. When I was in the program, I was developing some of the training for the new pilots. The airplane hadn't been developed. I was in that program back in 2003 to 2006. And so the first time they flew the airplane was like the actual, what we call the IOC, the real squadron, stood up in like 2012, 2013. So I was working on the tactics and the training for that airplane. And just so you know, none of the problems with the airplane were my fault. Okay, so I'm not going to take any of the blame. I'm only going to take all of the credit. It was interesting, though. I'll take you sideways into modern combat, and then we'll come back. The Marine Corps, Navy, and the Air Force, I think, were looking forward when they built that airplane into the next phase of fighter aviation. You have a Category 4 aircraft, which F-18 and F-16, F-15, those are all what we call Cat 4, Category 4 aircraft. Well, the Joint Strike Fighter and the F-22, for that matter, the F-22, and the F-35 were both what we call Category 5. There was legitimate conversation when I was in the Marines of jumping right to what we call Cat 6 or Category 6 aircraft. And just so you know, Category 6 aircraft don't have a pilot. That's the biggest distinguisher in that aircraft. And we talk a lot about China and the threat of Russia and that sort of thing. The next war will be combined a cyber warfare, and it will be a drone war, really. It's fascinating to me that we're still piloting aircraft. I mean, I think it's cool. Don't get me wrong. And I would hate to see the days of piloted aircraft go away. But really, one of the most important things when you look at aircraft like that is speed and innovation. We live in a world that is moving so fast. With the advent of the internet, then social media, then AI, then generative AI, and the tools that come along with that, like every day there's a new development in the business space. And it really takes wisdom, knowledge, and implementation to be able to adjust through this space that you're in. So a lot of what I do with business owners is trying to help them look literally like not just 10 weeks down the road, but 10 years, 20 years down the road to be able to adjust their business. I've got one big client in the health space. I have folks who are in the transportation space. Well, both of those spaces will be so disrupted, even over the next 5 years, much less the next 10 years. And my job a lot of times as an advisor is to look forward with vision and see where the world is changing, because it's happening really fast. And when you have certainty as the future, you can make decisions that are profitable and also beneficial for your team members. So yeah.
Amen. You flew an F-18 on a single engine while setting a distance record. What mindset transition kind of helps you go through a military precision to business consulting, which is obviously completely different?
Yeah, so this is I tell a lot of stories about how I tried to kill my airplane. This is the one story where the airplane actually tried to kill me. We were flying a ferry flight, so we were taking a squadron of aircraft, which is 12 airplanes, from San Diego, right here at Miramar, where I was based, all the way to Japan, Iwakuni Air Station. We were going to be there for 6 months. The way you ferry aircraft is usually you have a big Air Force tanker, like in this case, it was a KC-10, and you take off, meet the KC-10, and you just refuel all the way to Hawaii. So it's about a 6-hour flight. You're just refueling the whole way. The F-18 can't make it. Like I know you've probably flown on, Hawaiian Airlines or American over the ocean, but the F-18 would run out of gas about 2 hours into flight. So we're just constantly refueling. And then we landed in Hawaii. We're going to take off again and go to Guam another day, and then we're going to fly from Guam to Japan in another day. Well, in between Hawaii and Guam, I heard a noise in my cockpit. The airplane has a warning system, and it goes doo 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 when there's a problem. And I heard that noise. We were about 1,000 miles away from Hawaii and about 1,000 miles away from Wake Island, actually, which had been my destination that day. It was a divert aircraft field. And when I heard that noise, I looked down at my left display, and it said these simple letters. It said L, then there was a space, then it said ENG, then there was a space, and then it said PR. Left, ENG, PR, which means left engine pressure. Essentially what my airplane was telling me was that there was an oil pressure problem in my left engine. Now, most of the time, oil pressure problems are a more of a symptom than they are the actual problem. Most of the time, that means your engine has a metal shear inside. In other words, your engine's eating itself, which spikes the oil pressure because the whole system gets clogged. And when I saw that, I immediately went through what we call our emergency action procedure, which is the first thing you do anytime you have an emergency, just to like slow things down. I just pulled the throttles back, looked at my engine pressure again, and sure enough, it was off the chart. Now I had a decision to make, because an engine that is eating itself will eventually explode. You don't really have a lot of time to make the decision, and just you don't have all the information. Really, all you know is what you're seeing on your cockpit instruments. The left engine pressure is high, or internal temperature is a little bit high, but you're guessing. You're making some really good educated guesses. And so what I did was just shut the engine down, because that was the next step in the procedure, and that seemed to solve the problem. Now, it solved one problem and created another problem. I could have safely flown behind that tanker for another 1,000 miles and made my way to the divert airfield, but now I had one engine. An airplane typically will fly 300, 350 miles an hour, indicated airspeed. That's about 500 miles over the ground. But with one engine, you're going to fly about 220, 250 miles an hour, a lot slower because of that engine. And that engine's actually going to work a lot harder. So believe it or not, you're going to burn more gas, which means I needed more gas. And as I looked at my display, it essentially told me that I was going to run out of gas about 300 miles away from Wake Island. So I struggled my way back up to the tanker, got more gas. Then the display tells me that I'm going to run out of gas about 100 miles from Wake Island. And that's when I saw my entire squadron disappear into the horizon. They didn't have time nor the gas to stick around for me. And I can tell you, in that moment, I knew what alone really felt like. I had about 2 hours to get to my destination. I was over one of the most shark-infested waters of the entire world. And I didn't plan, just to be honest with you, on spending my afternoon in a raft chumming for sharks. I planned on spending my evening, having a beer at the Officers Club in Wake Island. And so And so I did what every pilot is taught to do. You do the procedure, and then you plan for your contingencies, and then you execute the plan. And for 2 hours, I flew my airplane. Now, the benefit of a F-18 is you get lighter as you fly farther, and your gas mileage gets better. So initially, it said I was gonna be short by about 200 miles. Then it was about 100 miles. Then it was 50. Then the number clicked over and said, no, I'm actually gonna have a little bit of gas when I get there. Actually, a little bit more gas when I get there. A little bit more gas when I get there. And when I got within 10 miles, I could see this tiny little atoll, this coral reef that's got a runway on top of it. And I call at 10 miles and ask the control tower for permission to land, and there's no answer. And at 5 miles, I call and there's no answer. There's 2 miles, they call and there's no answer. And then I did something that was illegal. You could actually lose your wings for this, but I landed. I actually landed the airplane, taxied it all the way back. As soon as I shut the airplane down, this guy came running across the tarmac, and he was the station chief. And he said, thank God you landed. We had a complete generator failure. When you were 10 miles out, I'm like, man, when you have a bad day, you have a bad day. And then about 10 minutes later, my crew chief came out of the airplane. He was looking in the engine of the airplane, and he said, well, sir, it's a good thing you shut her down, because that airplane was about to explode. So I thought, oh, my bad day just turned into a good day. I'm alive. I'm here on the ground. And I always tell that story in a couple different ways. But first, just tell people, like, business, especially entrepreneurship. I know you work primarily with entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs are listening to your show. Entrepreneurship is a dangerous business. I got out of flying jets and got into entrepreneurship. I'm going to tell you, there's probably more risk, frankly, in being an entrepreneur than it is being a pilot. The worst thing that can happen to you as a pilot is you die for being something for doing something dumb. Man, the worst thing that happened to you as an entrepreneur, there's a lot worse. Honestly, there's like bankruptcy, there's huge litigation, there's like tax audits and everything, all this danger that's around you. And if you succeed, everyone's there to pat you on the back and put you on the cover of Forbes magazine. And if you fail, there's no one there. An entrepreneur is a very lonely person, and you can't tell your success to anyone. Like, I mean, I go to this really great church here in San Diego, and when you have $1 million years, people are like, how was your year? You're just like, it was good. What are you going to tell them? We just did like a 7-figure year. Like, that doesn't even compute for a lot of people. And so it's a very lonely place. But man, when you have wingmen and when you have people who can support you, and when you have a real purpose, like you really want to change the world as far as, in addition to making money and creating a great lifestyle for yourself and your family, then it's a really good place to be.
Awesome. And thank you for your service, of course.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the gas.
Yes, I'm going to disagree and say I would rather not avoid the death. So you had to make life and death decisions in milliseconds. What's a high pressure cockpit strategy that entrepreneurs can use when they're navigating a business dog?
Yeah. Good. Great question. Great question. Thank you for that. It's a new question too. I do a lot of shows, and some of the questions are similar, and I love the ones that I don't hear. So this is a new one for me. I really like that. So one of the procedures that we have, so let's say you have a airplane that has gotten on fire, or your airplane is says some sort of flight control problem or whatever. There's a lot of pilots who have actually gone on and made the situation worse because their initial reaction was the wrong reaction. So, for example, the story that I told you about the left engine, there have been pilots who had lost their left engine, and they went to turn off their left engine, but instead of turning off their left engine, they turned off their right engine, and now they have an off engine and a broken engine. Right? Turns you into a lawn dart very quickly in your airplane that doesn't glide very well. And so one of the procedures that we teach young students to do when they deal with emergencies is, the first time they notice an emergency is to push the clock. Now, in the F-18, in most military airplanes, we have something called an 8-day clock. It's literally this analog clock that just, like, if you've ever seen like 60 Minutes, it literally just goes around. And there's a timer on it. So if you're doing specific maneuvers and you just want to use like a little analog timer, you can just push the button and the timer will start. And so what we tell our young students is, when you encounter an emergency, reach down and push the clock. Now, just, there's no reason to do that. You don't need a timer. You don't need to know how long something's been. You literally are teaching this young pilot to do something other than their first reaction. And usually what happens is, within that, it only takes a second or two just to push the clock. But usually within that second or two, the subconscious mind has had time to catch up. The processing power of the brain has settled itself just a little bit, and the answers actually come fairly quickly. Most pilots who, and just 95% of air accidents are caused by pilot error. So most pilots have an initial reaction that is almost always wrong. And I always tell entrepreneurs, when you're in an extremis situation, you have a big promotion coming up, an event's about to start. Like, I did an event last year. We had this big, huge online event, and just like all these people ready to be on Zoom. And it turned out that Zoom was blocking us and keeping about 100 people in our Zoom room and kicking everyone else off. Well, I was about to freak out about that, and I was upset because my team had made some mistakes, and I was kind of frustrated. But I just punched the clock, man. I'm like, you know what? Everything's going to be fine. This is going to be a great event. And what that did is it gave my team time to work the problem, not the person. If I freaked out, and a lot of entrepreneurs would have freaked out in the situation, started yelling at people, "What is happening? You guys got to fix the situation." Now they have to allocate part of their resources to fixing me and part of their resources to fixing the problem. We debriefed it later on. I mean, we got to the bottom of it. My point is that a lot of entrepreneurs in extremist situations, big deals, big promotional things, maybe a big client is frustrated and complaining about something. In those moments, a lot of times entrepreneurs take what's ever happening inside and take it all outside. And now their team has to deal with two problems, not one problem. And I always just tell entrepreneurs, look, you're going to debrief it later. But in those moments, just punch the clock, take a moment, just take a big deep breath, then work the problem, not the person, right? Work the problem, not the person. And then once you do that, then go back and debrief it and figure out, why Becky forgot to set the Zoom settings right or whatever.
Absolutely.
I don't have anyone that works for me named Becky. I'm just.
Of course not. You have keynote speeches, you have books, you have products, you have programs. Talk a little bit about who's an ideal client for the business now and what it looks like.
Yeah, ideal client for me. Is that what you're
Yeah.
asking? Yeah, I mean, my ideal client. So first of all, it's a conscious-minded entrepreneur. I work with 6 and 7, 8-figure entrepreneurs who have a product or a vision and want to change the world. I work with startups and founders, people who have a vision and a passion. Just I love. I mean, I love the nonprofit space and I love the church. I go to church. I don't think those are the places that are going to change the world. I actually think entrepreneurs are going to change the world. I have in my hand an iPhone. This is a pocket computer that in the 80s when I grew up would have been magic. Honestly, like the idea that you can carry a Cray supercomputer in your pocket, but that idea was designed, created, and sold by an entrepreneur or several entrepreneurs that were willing to risk. And I love entrepreneurship. I love what people are doing out there that to create new products and change the world. That's the space that I work in. And so my ideal person that I work with kind of one-on-one is that 7 or 8-figure entrepreneur who's got a product or a vision to change the world. Maybe they're raising money. Maybe they're starting a business that they're need to raise like $10 million or 20 million to get a project off the ground. And also, usually it's a person who's got some spiritual grounding as well. The book that's over my shoulder is a book called God Talks. I teach entrepreneurs how to ask God questions about their business plan and get answers. And I'm a pretty nuts and bolts guy. I'm not like a big wooey guy. I'm not one of those people that believes that you can just sit in your office and think about, success and it just comes to you. I think you got to go, work to get it. But at the same time, I think there are spiritual principles at work. There's, a world that's been created that operates off of natural principles and spiritual principles. And when you leverage into those, by the way, no matter what your belief system is, I work with everybody from all walks of life and faiths. But when you leverage into those, what you find is that you end up not only with wisdom in your business, but you also end up with divine wisdom or divine intelligence, which always, I mean this when I say this, always makes it easier and lighter and more joyful. It's always that way. There's never more work or more stress when you're connected that way. There's always more ease and more lightness and just more fun, frankly. So yeah, that's what I usually do.
Awesome. Your mission says connecting people with God and letting him do the rest. How does that spiritual framework inform your approach to strategy and business?
Yeah, really good question. So over my shoulder, well, there's this plant over my shoulder, but behind me, if you're watching the video, there's this little tool that I call the wisdom pyramid. The wisdom pyramid is essentially discusses how information in the business space is shared. You can't see it on the picture. Maybe you could if you zoomed in, but on the bottom, it's reaction. Then above that is knowledge. Then above that is data. Then above that is knowledge. Then above that is wisdom. And above that is divine wisdom. And when you start at the bottom, you put a lot of effort in and you get very little results. So for example, most of what you see in the business space nowadays is just a reaction to something. It's a reaction to what a customer said. It's a reaction to what a team member said. Most of what you see in the political space, certainly in the media space, like if you go onto X and you start a discussion about some controversial issue, everybody's response to you is going to be a reaction. It's not going to be very well thought out. The argument tends to trail into lots of different directions. That's where most people live. They wake up in the morning, check their phone, check their email, check their text messages, check the news, and then they live a day full of reacting to everything that's around them. It's the lowest form of information as an entrepreneur. It is the least effective, and that's why I usually encourage people to get out of it as quickly as possible. Above that is data. Data is important, but as we said in the Marine Corps, numbers lie and liars use numbers. So you have to be clear about what data you're looking for as an entrepreneur. Above that is knowledge. And by the way, knowledge is important. Knowledge is like, here's the kind of landing page we need. Here's what kind of scripting we need for our salespeople. Those good things, but it is middle information still. Then above that is wisdom. And when you talk to someone with wisdom, you go, this is a reaction. Every time, if I say something to my client that's a wisdom statement, they always go, oh, that's so simple. It was there the entire time, but they didn't see it. In other words, they couldn't read the instructions from the inside of the medicine bottle. And that's wisdom. And then above that is divine wisdom. You literally having a journal and a conversation with God and asking him questions about your business. And just, I've taught atheists to do this. So I know it sounds hokey and crazy, but it's a very simple process. I literally teach people how to download their business plan from heaven. And what I always tell entrepreneurs to do is to do the opposite of what most people do. Most people start at reaction, then go to data and knowledge. Why don't you start at the top? Start your business conversation with a divine conversation, then move into wisdom, getting great advice from people who carry wisdom, then move into knowledge. And when you do it that way, what ends up happening is two things. Number one, you build a business that's really heart-centered and you love. I used to have companies that I was like so excited for the weekend and for my holidays. And nowadays, I'll be on vacation. I just went for 2 weeks with my family to Japan. It was awesome. I was kind of looking forward to getting back. Like, I love what I do and I love serving the way that I serve. And the second thing you do is it's easier and lighter. There's this verse in the New Testament that says, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And business should be like that. And if it's not, if it feels heavy, if it feels difficult all the time, you're doing it wrong. There's an easy way to do it, and there's a lighter way to do it that creates great value, creates great revenue, and creates an amazing lifestyle for you. And that's really what I teach entrepreneurs.
Awesome. We know your time is incredibly valuable. We greatly appreciate you spending some of it with us. For our folks watching and listening, where is the best place to go learn about you, the books, the courses, the programs, the keynotes, all things Ed?
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for asking me that, Seth. So really just give you two websites. They're the easiest websites on planet Earth to remember. It doesn't even matter if you're driving a car on a treadmill right now. You can remember these two. The first one is God Talks. It's GODTALKS. It's godtalks.com. When you get there, you'll see the book that I wrote. You'll see some more information about sort of programs and events. That's sort of home base for that discussion with God about your business. My other place is just edrush.com. That's my name, EDRUSH.com. Super easy website to remember. Just look at my name on this YouTube or the podcast, wherever you watch this. Just hit that. When you get there, you'll see a link that takes you to my weekly flight brief. That's like a Friday email that comes out, just kind of packed with some information, a little bit of story that I think you'll really love. So yeah, it's godtalks.com and edrush.com. And by the way, while you're online, Seth's not going to ask you this, but I will. Reviews actually mean a lot to the people that do podcasts. I do a lot of podcasts, and the reviews are really important to iTunes and all the other podcast servers. So, like if you got to the end of this interview and it was valuable for you, hit a 5-star button. Give a couple sentences as to why you like the show. You can even ask AI to help you make it better if you want. Like, it's very simple to do. And I know that your host would appreciate it. So I'll say that too.
Thank you, Ed. We greatly appreciate that. And we appreciate your time. Thanks everybody for watching or listening. We will talk to you or see you next time.
Thanks, man. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.